Okay, this next section of video is on the two radial decoder picks that I make. I don't often make picks for radial locks because generally they're not the kind of things that people have to open often covertly, and there's a lot of other companies that make them. HPC make several for the I think the 7 and the 8 and the 10 pin radial locks that you tend to get on some alarm panels and so on and so forth. This is an exception to the rule. There are two French locks, one called Picard and one called Axiera, that are actually door locks. They're Euro profile cylinders. I've got half of one of them here. I haven't got both the locks. And they're very well made. They both have only 5 pins or sliders, but they are of a particularly good design in that your conventional radial pin tools, which just push the pins in, would not work on these locks because there's a chamber into which the pin sits, that as the lock turns, that chamber falls out of alignment with the top part of the lock. In other words, the face of the lock doesn't turn, it's the mechanism underneath, and your picks would cross that line and it would prevent you from actually turning it. So you'd be forced into a situation where you would have to open the lock or have it picked, but then go away and make a key. Also, the keys have moving components on them, moving sliders, which are for a special master pin in the first position, well, certainly on the Axiera and on the Picard. And to date, nobody's been able to design a radial pin pick for these locks. So I went away and came up with the two tools that you see here, which basically look the same. This one is for the Picard, which has these two large blocks sticking out here. And this one is for the Axiera, which is, in fact, no, it isn't. I'll just get the one for the Axiera. Yeah. This one is the one for the Axiera, which has another component here, which is for the master pin that I was talking about. You rotate that in order to lift the master pin at the side. I'm not going to give a demonstration on these. They're basically used in exactly the same way as any other radial pick. You would introduce the tool into the lock, apply torque, and what there are 5 sliding picks around the outside. Obviously move each of them in turn to find which of the sliders is binding first. If it was this one, you would move it down, and it goes down a certain way and then it will click. There are false notches on both of these locks, on the sliders of both of these locks. So it would go to a position where it would go loose, and then you would just slide down the bar until it touched it and lock it in place. If that is a false notch, it will later on bind up and you will have to progress to a next position. So you'll always be moving the picks forward. And basically on the Axiera there are 2 false positions, then the true position, and then 2 false positions afterwards. Once you get to the correct position, though, it will not bind up again. So it will just remain there until the others are in the correct position, then the lock will open. So you find the first position where it goes loose, that'll click in, then you go around again to look for whichever one is next binding, progress that until it clicks, lock that into position, carry on round, lock that in position. Once you've got all of them in a gate, the tool will turn, just fractionally. And then one of the ones that you've already put in a gate will then bind up, because that'll be the false gate. You would then release tension, progress it to its next position, lock it off. It really doesn't take much time at all, maximum of 2 minutes to pick the lock. Once the lock is open and it begins to turn, allow it to turn about 30 degrees, I would say, no further than that, and then make sure that each of the pick is in the centre of its movement bracket. There'll be a sort of tolerance, a range within which the pick will move, which is the centre of the open gap, so to speak. Find that position, lock it in that position. When they're all locked in position, you can then turn it 2 or 3 times, whatever is required to open the door. The lines that go around each of the decoders are used to determine the code once you've got the lock open. So that if you have to return to the same lock a second time to open it, you would simply set those picks to the open position, lock them off, and put it in and use it like a key. Of course, you could alternatively go away and make a key, but I'm not too sure that the machines exist to cut these keys to code. So you would probably have to use the pick as a variable key for your second entry. The Axiera and the Picard are both more or less the same. I'll give you a rough description. Well, I don't know if you can see from that distance there, but this is the internal mechanism of the Axiera. And as I say, it has effectively it's got pins, but in fact there's sliders. There's no drivers on them. And they slide down, and the shear line is round here. There are two sort of semicircular brackets that slip into this circular slot, and that becomes the shear line, because that cannot turn, and only when the correct gate, if I slide this slider down here, that's a false gate passing the slot at the moment. That's a false gate, and that's the true gate just coming into view there. All of the sliders need to be pushed down until the true gate is there, and that is deep enough to allow the semicircular clips that sit in that slot to slide round freely. It's a pretty good design of lock. It's only got 5 pins. Its inherent defence against being opened is not the mechanism itself, it's the actual design of it. It's the fact that, yes, it's possible to pick it, and it's not in fact difficult, but it's very difficult to design a tool that will do the job. And I think that these are the only tools available on the market to actually do these two locks. I don't think these locks are particularly common outside of France, but I know they're sold in Italy, and I know they're sold in Spain as well, although I don't think they're that common. And that's about it as far as the radial pin decoder picks are concerned.